are about to begin. My name is Kayla Adiang. I'm a sophomore at Essex High School, and I would like to welcome everyone who came here to participate. Please keep in mind to be respectful of your peers and the following people who are going to speak. If you have any further questions, feel free to email any of the speakers and stay in contact. I present to you Ashell. Students, parents, and supporters, I want to thank you for joining us today to take a stand against the gun violence that continues to dominate our communities and our culture. We are brought together in an attempt to make meaning of the lives senselessly taken in Parkland, Florida, where 14 students our age were gunned down in cold blood, while in math class, English class, study hall, or hanging out with a friend. We are here today in solidarity with the survivors of Parkland, Florida, to give voice to the students who can no longer speak for themselves, students who can no longer attend prom, play in a championship game, go on a date, or graduate, or say goodbye to their parents on the first day of college. Instead, their parents were forced to say goodbye amidst tremendous violence and preventable suffering. And this is not the first time that students have been gunned down while at school. It's not the first time this year, it's not the third time, or the fifth, or the 10th. In fact, there have been 18 school shootings this year, and it's only March. That is an average of 1.7 shootings per week. Gun violence is impacting our generation in a way that our parents and grandparents never experienced. I fear that adults don't completely understand this issue. This is not about being a Democrat or a Republican or a member of the NRA or the Greenpeace. This is about kids being killed in our classrooms. And because adults can get sidetracked with the irrelevance of politics, it is our job to stand up for our peers. Stand up by taking a position on guns, access to guns, sales of guns, purchase of guns, use of guns, and addictions to guns that is of epidemic proportion in our country. The Second Amendment is meant to keep us safe, and as a U.S. citizen, I value this right and freedom. But we are not safe. We are afraid. We need to tell our parents, teachers, coaches, administrators, and legislators what it's like to contemplate what it will be like to die in the hallway or witness a friend dying before our eyes. This trauma is defining our generation unless we find the courage, the voice, and the staying power to affect real change. We will now have 3 minutes of silence for Alyssa Aladuth, Scott Bajel, and Martine Duick.
Thank you. My name is Amelia Duffy, and I am a sophomore here at Essex High School. Kids are change. Kids create change. They're stepping up to the challenge and taking it head on. They demand to be listened to and demand action to be taken. To everyone out there saying kids shouldn't be involved with politics or kids don't know what they're talking about, kids are the one who have helped change Florida's gun laws. Kids are the one who have organized this National School Walkout. Kids are the ones who are being the change they want to see. Since Parkland, the kids have been active. The Parkland kids have used their grief and fueled it for change. They've taken on the NRA against their incredibly aggressive lobbying, which have led to politicians accepting money and have gun reform become impossible. They are ready to take down the NRA and any politician that accepts money from them. The kids have already got numerous companies to end their special contracts with members of the NRA. The companies include the First National Bank of Omaha, Delta Airlines, United Airlines, Serva, Avis, Budget Group, Hertz, Alamo, Enterprise, National, Starkey Hearing Technologies, MetLife, Chubb, TrueCar, SimpliSafe, and Somatic. All of these companies have ended their contracts with the NRA because of the kids. The kids are making this issue stand out and the discussion not disappear. They have also been able to get more companies to raise their minimum age to purchase a gun to 21 years old. These companies are Walmart, LL Bean, Dick's Sporting Good, and Fred Meyer. Again, the kids have shed light onto an important part of gun reform, age. I quote from Rolling Stone, REI and Mountain Equipment Co-op, neither of which sell guns, have suspended orders from Vista Outdoor because it owns several major gun manufacturers. Kids are creating change. They have also been successful in getting gun legislation brought up and signed. In Florida, a bill has been created that, I quote, requires a 3-day waiting period for firearm purchases, bans the sale or possession of bump fire stocks, gives law enforcement the authority to seize weapons from potentially dangerous people, and raises the minimum age to buy a gun to 21 instead of 18. State CNN. The kids stood their ground. They didn't give up and are still fighting. In our own state, we want change. We need change. We have the least restrictive gun laws in the country. That should not be. We need better background checks, a ban on bump stocks and large capacity magazines, and an increase in the minimum age to buy a gun from 16 years old to 21. These are all important aspects of gun reform we need. A student was arrested and pled not guilty after being charged with attempted murder at Fairhaven High School in Vermont when authorities discovered he had planned a school shooting. Because of that, Governor Phil Scott is willing to discuss gun reform because of this incident. He now realizes how likely a school shooting is to happen in Vermont. He says everything is on the table, everything needs to be discussed. And I agree with him. That's why we are here today, to create change, to bring notice to a big problem in our lives. We do not want to be the next school that is affected with this terrible plague. We will fight against it and we will end it. We are not going to stop until we get what we want. We will be the change we want to see. We will have another 3 minutes of silence for Nicholas Dorrit, Aaron Feiss, and Jamie Guttenberg.
Thank you. As the first non-student speaking, I'm here representing U.S. Senator Patrick Leahy, and on behalf of the Senator, myself as a non-student here, and I have to say on behalf of my daughter, who's a middle school teacher, to all of you students who are stepping forward now, thank you, thank you, thank you again. Senator Leahy couldn't be here today. He's in D.C. Yesterday, he was on the floor of the U.S. Senate speaking just so proudly of what the students are doing in Vermont and across the country. The Senator is very impressed with the actions being taken by the students. Your voices here in Vermont, in Parkland, and across the country are saying enough is enough. You're showing true leadership where others who are older and in established positions of authority have failed. One of the Senator's most frustrating moments in his entire career in the Senate, which has been considerable, came after the shootings in Sandy Hook when where of course 20 students and 6 adults were killed. At that time, he was the chairman of the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee, and he was in that position of authority, and he brought common sense gun control legislation through the bipartisan legislation through that committee and brought it to the floor of the Senate. But at that time, urging his colleagues to take action, he said it is time to find solutions to help ensure that no family, no school, and no community ever has to endure such grievous tragedy again. Sadly, his plea was drowned out by the influence of special interest groups pushing out what he called misleading scare tactics that are upside-down facts the legislation failed to pass. But you are speaking out today to make sure that the facts are clear. And if the mood in America is shifting, and Senator Leahy hopes that it is due to the types of actions that you are taking here today and due to the voices of the students. Senator Leahy will continue in his work in Congress to work for bills that ban the sale of military assault weapons to civilians, close background check loopholes for gun shows, internet, and other private sales, prevent the straw purchase of firearms, and provide the funding for common sense security improvements at the schools. But it will take voices like yours demanding honest common sense raised across the country, your votes in future elections that will be needed to overcome these upside-down facts that create the political will to turn these bills into laws. It will be up to you. And again, on behalf of Senator Leahy, thank you. And now, on behalf of Chris Hickson, age 49, Luke Hoyer, age 15, and Kara Longren, age 14, a few moments of silence.
Boy, you know, I wish that you all could be standing where we are, because there's a lot of you in front of us, and I'm not sure you can grasp how powerful it is. But from here, we see you. My name's Dylan Giambattista. I'm one of the state representatives for Essex Junction, and I serve on the Education Committee in the House of Representatives. And I just want you to know that yesterday there were a lot of walkouts that were canceled because of snow. A little bit of snow might stop us from going to school from time to time, but it doesn't stop you from being heard. And in the legislature next Wednesday, we're holding a joint hearing of the education committees that want to hear from students, because your voice, as we've heard already, is so important to changing the conversation in this state and in this country, and we need to hear from you. So I've shared some information with Jamal. I'll make sure that it gets out to all of you, but I hope we'll hear from you soon down at the State House. You can make a huge difference. As Ashel and others have said, there are few words, perhaps no words, that can speak to the pain and suffering, to the grief, and to the sadness that brings us here today. We all know of the events of a month ago in Florida. We've heard of these events all too often. We hear the names. We see the faces. It's hard to hear it so often. But looking out at all of you, looking at the walkouts going on across this country in the last 24 hours, it gives me hope. Because countless students across the country, students of all backgrounds, students of all beliefs, they've come together to walk out in an unprecedented show of resolve. Students like you have left their desks. They've left the familiar routine of their classrooms. They've stepped out to make the case to all of us that change is needed. By walking out, you have assumed a leadership role in a moment that calls out for leaders. You know, I've heard it said that today and the events of the last 24 hours are historic. Well, know this. If they are historic, it's because you have made them historic. If today leads to change, it's because you have made that change. Today is the day that our community, our state, our nation realizes that you're not simply high school students. You're leaders. And as citizens raising your voices, you stand on the shoulders of citizens who have come before you. citizens who have taken stands against improbable or impossible odds to try to make a difference in this country and in this world. This is powerful, folks. It's cold, but it's powerful. And as I look at all of you, as I look at you gathered here today, I'm reminded of a quote of a once well-known leader in this country. They said, "My country, right or wrong, if right, to be kept right. If wrong, to be set right." Look around. Look at this gathering. Turn to the person next to you. You see these students, but do you know who they are? Because when I look around, here's what I know. You are right. You have grit. You have determination. You are leaders standing at the edge of a breakthrough. This is your moment. When your generation, this generation, comes together to stand up for what is just and right, there is nothing you cannot accomplish. Lead us. We are listening. You can make the difference. Get out there, show up, tell your neighbors, tell your family members, because you all need to be heard. We need you. Thank you for being here today. We're going to take several minutes of silence in honor of Gina Montrallo, 14, Joaquin Oliver, 17, and Elena Petty, 14.
Hi there. For anyone that doesn't know me, my name is Monroe Shearer. I'm a junior. And I wanted to say first off that I appreciate you guys coming out here so much. It's cold and it's snowy and it's kind of miserable, but you making the trek out here gives me a lot of hope that our generation is going to be able to change this. I'm going to start with some audience participation. So if you didn't wear gloves, I apologize in advance. If you are over the age of 18, raise your hand. If you are 18 or over, raise your hand. If you are registered to vote, put your hand down. Thank you. I see 2 hands still up. As a generation, that is our most powerful voice. As Americans, that is our voice. And not using that voice is betraying what it means to be an American, and I think that we as a generation need to embrace that. All right, more audience participation. Raise your hand if you were at EHS last spring. Most of us, yeah. So after the shooting in Parkland, Florida, I was reminded of one of the most important moments in our collective conscious. A moment that physically and emotionally brought us closer together than pretty much anything else in our memory as a community. So how many of us sat on the floor in the dark for a couple hours, waiting to find out if we were gonna die or not? I did! I sat there and was reminded in those moments that tomorrow is a privilege, never a promise. We are Generation Columbine. We grew up in the shadow of these shootings. And for us to have to be reminded of that as teenagers, as people who shouldn't be reminded of that, is something so deeply just disturbing. That's the world we live in, that's the country we live in, where we haven't been able to stand up enough yet to be able to make that change. And on that day, what struck me was the overwhelming silence. It was a silence that stank of terror, of uncertainty, and of dread. However, it was also a comfort, as that silence wasn't being punctuated by the ending of human lives. I believe that, in a metaphorical sense, we are faced with that same silence in our nation right now. It is comforting to know that that violence hasn't come knocking on our doorstep quite yet, but it could. It could be marching its way through the halls that you fancy as your own tomorrow, or next year, or when you have children that you are obligated to protect. What Parkland reminded me is that on that day, that could have been us. It could be us tomorrow. It could be us next week. And we're scared of that. It's terrifying. And that fear exists within each of us, and it exists within our nation. So our only option as young people is to break that silence. Yell, scream, kick, and bite to make yourself heard. Refuse to go down without a fight, because that silence continues to smother out children, families, and people just like us, with futures that could be earth-shattering. It makes my stomach churn to think that if violence came marching through the door of our school, or any other Vermont school, or any school in the country for that matter, that we could have done something more to prevent it. We could have had those weapons taken away from people who intended to do harm. We sometimes forget that we, again, as the generation that grew up in the shadow of Columbine, have that power. We cannot be silenced and we cannot be stopped. It's our generation that will break the lock on American gun laws when no other generation was brave enough to. We have the power to change this, and our silence isn't going to protect us any longer. And on that note, we are now going to take 3 minutes of silence in honor of Meadow Pollock, Helena Ramsey, and Alex Schechter.
I want to personally thank each and every one of you. Because of you, I know that my 9-year-old son is going to have a safer, brighter future. So thank you. My name is Lori Houghton, and I am your other state representative of Essex Junction. I was asked specifically to talk about what you can all do as youth who may not be able to vote yet to make change in this world. And I say a lot, and you're already doing it. Being here today shows our leaders that not only are you willing to stand up for what you think is right, you're willing to do what it takes to make it happen. You are moving us forward. And if you can't yet vote, what can you do? You can reach out to those of us you can, whether it's myself, Representative Giambattista, your federal delegation. We need to hear from you. I was elected, Dylan was elected by the people in the Junction who are 18 years and older. But we serve everyone, all ages. And I'll tell you what, I haven't heard from a single one of you on what you want to make yourself feel safer in your community and in your schools. We need to hear from you. Call us, text us, tweet us, whatever it takes, knock on my door, but we need to hear from you. What does it take to make you feel safe? Because you should feel safe in your schools and your community. In Vermont, 17-year-olds can vote in the primary election if they're going to be 18 by the general election. So this year, if you're going to be 18 by November 6th, you can vote on August 14th in our primary election. So if you can vote now or in the future, I have 2 challenges for you when you go to the polls. Number 1, vote for everything you can. For president, for governor, for senator, for representative, for your town administrator, for the school board. It doesn't matter. All of these leaders who will be elected will be making changes to your communities. And don't think, as Monroe said, your voice doesn't count. We just had an election here in Essex Junction that was won by 18 votes. Just 18. So your voice is your vote. All right, but you're saying, great, I still can't vote, so what can I do? I have 5 things for you. 1, educate yourself. How does our government work? How does a bill become a law? Democracy is messy, and it's definitely not easy, but it's our system. And you can be more effective navigating it when you understand how the system works. Come to the State House. Dylan and I would be happy to help make that happen. Take a government class. Have coffee with an elected community member. Second, understand the issue. Spend time reading and listening to reputable publications. Seek out differing opinions. You may learn something that strikes a chord with you or a viewpoint you never thought of. Find the experts and follow the legislation. Right now, there are several gun safety bills moving through the State House. Find out what they are, read about them, and let Dylan and I and your senators know what you want. But remember, safety is not just a gun issue. So what else do we need to be doing in our community for you to feel safe? Is it more counselors, reform of school discipline, anti-bullying, something else we haven't thought of? You have all grown up in the digital age. You know you can find anything online. Be careful what you believe is fact, but use it. Understand what the issue is. Number 3, learn the art of conversation. Put down your phone, look at the person in the eyes, ask questions, listen, and respond respectively and honestly. I read recently, conversations, as they tend to play out in person, are messy, full of pauses and interruptions and topic changes and assorted awkwardness. But the messiness is what allows for true exchange. This is so true. Don't shy away from it. Yesterday, I read an article about kids from Chicago being invited to meet with kids from Parkland, Florida. 2 groups that couldn't be more different. One that deals with gun violence every day in their lives, and one that used to be one of the safest places to live. Economically, racially diverse kids, but they talked. I'm sure their conversations were messy and full of awkwardness, but they talked, and you can do it here. Engage someone who has a different opinion than yours. Engage someone you've never talked with. Engage the new kid in school or the person who sits by themselves at lunch. Policy change by itself doesn't achieve the long-lasting outcome we seek for complex problems. A cultural shift is needed for change to truly take hold, and that starts with conversation. Take action. You're doing it today. Keep going. This is not a one-time event. For instance, April 2nd, the school is holding a safety forum. Come, engage, tell the leaders what you want. Write Dylan and I, call us, create a petition on an issue that's important to you. Become active in a local organization that has the same mission that you value. Have an idea but don't know where to begin? Ask around. You can always reach out to me. Action leads to progress and change. And lastly, and to me one of the most important, is know yourself. Self-discovery continues throughout our lives, but you are all in the thick of it right now. Pay attention to your heart, to what is important to you, and to what values you hold dear. They might be different than your friends and even your parents, but that's okay. Be true to yourself and commit to those actions and issues that are important to you. My son is counting on it. Remember, the future is yours. Insist on it. Never again. Thank you. They're great. And now we will take a few moments of silence for Carmen Schrinktrup, 16, Peter Wang, 15, and those traumatically affected.
Thank you. My name is Isaiah Allen Drown. I am a senior here at Essex High School. I was not born and raised here. I was raised in a small town known as Enosburg Falls. Some of you may know it, some of you may not, but it's a little small town where there are farms, there are what you would refer to as rednecks. Me personally, I grew up around guns my entire life. Never once in my entire life have I ever thought of harming one of my fellow classmates. I wanted to see how many of you have siblings. Can you please raise your hands to show? Now everybody raise your hands that do not have siblings. Very few. But I'm sure you have friends that are like family to you. I worry about my siblings every day. I have 12 siblings. 12. I worry about their safety every day because I am not with them every day. I have one sibling right up there in the bleachers. I should not have to worry about my siblings being harmed while they are at school. They are here to get an education and to do things with their life to make a difference. When there is a flood, ants come together and form balls, rafts, or whatever to stay above the water to stay alive. They are able to carry 10 times their weight. We may not be ants, we cannot carry 10 times our weight, but we are strong. Our voices are powerful. One voice can move a mountain. If you all come together and speak together, you can shake the earth. It is not just me. There are other families that worry about their kids. When I hear stories about kids saying they don't want to wear their Skechers anymore because they are afraid that the lights on the Skechers will give away their position in the event of a shooter, that to me is not right. I would gladly give up every single one of my firearms for anyone here's life. Yeah! Thank you. I do not believe that my firearms are more important than anyone else's life. Yeah! The Second Amendment was meant to protect us, but it has done harm as well. My Second Amendment, my right to own a gun does not outweigh your right to live. Yeah! I thank you all for coming. It makes a difference, us coming together as students out here in the freezing cold in Vermont's bipolar winters. I thank each and every one of you for coming today. It will make a difference. Everyone will stand together and we will fight this. Thank you.
My name is Kaden Clark, and I am a junior at Center for Technology Essex and Champlain Valley Union High School. Coming today, I wasn't expecting this many people to come together. Yesterday, I spent the day looking at all the walkouts happening across the country. Honestly, this is amazing. This is amazing. I personally want to thank all of you for coming out and taking a stand. Like Isaiah said, one voice can move a mountain, we can move thousands. I've grown up in a military family. We moved all over the area because of my dad's job. I have owned guns. I own one right now, and I enjoy shooting it with my father in a gun range. But I would gladly give it up for anyone to protect them and to save them. I don't care if I don't know you. I may not know you, I may have seen you around, or I may have not even talked to you, but I would protect you if it meant giving up my guns. I have 4 older brothers, and 2 of them have daughters. I would do anything to protect them, and it sucks because I worry every day when they go to school if they're going to be safe, if they're going to be protected in their community. And I want your help, not only Isaiah's or one of the people up here, but all of us from all over the country to come together and take a stand to our government saying enough is enough. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Greta Alexandra Parker and I'm a freshman. First of all, I want to thank everyone who is participating in the walkout. Our voices are the ones that will lead to change. I also want to thank the administration because unlike many schools in the United States, our administration is in support of our walkout. There are schools across the nation whose administrations promise suspension to any students who participates in the walkout. These schools' locations do not only include more conservative states, but more progressive states in New England, such as Connecticut. It is so important that our community is in support of us, so thank you for that. Across our nation, mass shootings continue to increase while our neighboring countries have laws for gun control. We are nowhere close to succeeding in solving this problem. It is time for a change. When most of our parents were growing up, there were no seatbelts in cars. Many adults and children were dying in car accidents. People started a social change, demanding safety in motor vehicles because parents had enough of their children dying. The people's voices changed the car industry. Car companies were focused to make safer cars with seatbelts, and new laws were put into place. We had to change social behavior so people could be safer driving a car. Just like seatbelts in cars, it's going to take a dramatic change to end gun violence. As our society changes over time, social change needs to be made. This is why it is so important that we let our voices be heard. After the shooting in Parkland, Florida, our President Donald J. Trump released a speech to our country. He said, I quote, "To every parent, teacher, and child who's hurting so badly, we are here for you, whatever you need, whatever we can do to ease your pain." Just as Emma Gonzalez, a student from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, addressed Donald J. Trump's comments, if he said this to me, I would ask him how much money he receives from the National Rifle Association. And do you know how much money our president receives from the NRA? $30 million. In 2016, the NRA contributed more than $30 million to Trump's campaign. If Donald Trump claims he is here for us, whatever we need, would he be willing to put us first before his money and never accept a single donation from the NRA again? I think his answer would be non-existent. Our president is not the only politician who receives money from the NRA. Many politicians do. In fact, we have politicians that represent the state of Vermont that receive money from the NRA. We are lucky to live in a progressive state. Unfortunately, this does not mean we have safer gun laws. In fact, we have among the fewest gun laws in the nation. Many people might not be aware that we struggle with gun control right here in Vermont that is essential to having a safer community. Although it might be hard to say, the unfortunate events that took place in Parkland, Florida, and all across the nation could happen in our state, in our communities, and in our schools. We need to take action by making our voices heard. Once again, thank you to everyone who's out here, especially considering the cold. It might be hard to stand out here in the cold, but worse by far to experience a school shooting. It shouldn't take more death to prove to our state and federal leaders that change needs to be made. I encourage all of you to continue to make your voices heard by your peers, your neighbors, and your political representatives. Thank you.
I just want to thank everybody once more for coming out tonight, or today. Though right now our movement may be small, I promise that one day it will help flush the toxins of political corruption and violence from the veins of America. Please return silently to your classes or meet us out front in front of the school for a picture to commemorate this historical meeting.